Hello, everyone. This is Alexander Horat, your host of the Free American Press. Today, we're going to be having the president of Miles Franklin on the show, Andy Schectman. But before we get into it, if you could please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video, that'll be really appreciated. Hello, Andy. How are you doing today?
Alex, it's good to see you again. It's been too long. I'm well. I hope you are too. You look good.
Oh, well, thanks. You do too, Andy. So could you give us a gold and silver update?
Absolutely. I'd love to. I'll tell you, the physical demand for gold and silver, not just in my industry, but globally, is as strong as I have ever seen it. The supply has been tenuous at best all year, has been getting tougher and tougher to come by. But the demand is really accentuating when I think a lot of people are looking at the economy around them and starting to question, can these valuations stay where they are? I mean, heck, you don't have to look any further than Elon Musk, who sold $10 billion worth of Tesla the other day, or the CEO of Microsoft sold 50% of his holdings. You have the insiders selling. You have Bank of America coming out with their flow show report the other day, which cited, I think, kind of encapsulates why people feel the way they do. What Bank of America told us was that nearly $900 billion, Alex, went into US equities this year, $900 billion. That is almost $100 billion more than the last 19 years worth of inflows combined, they went on to say. So when you're talking about putting 2 decades worth of stimulus, if you will, into the stock market, I think that there are people who are paying attention are waking up to the fact that these valuations are stratospheric, that they are courtesy of a Federal Reserve who has kept interest rates low and money easy, whereby the hedge funds can borrow money at next to nothing, pummel it into the market, crank the prices up, make huge bonuses, cover their loan payments very easily, and all's well that ends well. But I think people like Elon Musk and the CEO of Microsoft, who are selling massive quantities of stock, realize that these numbers are in many respects fantasy land. And this is what they call in Austrian economics the crack up boom, where misallocation of capital and of resources creates difficulty in price discovery. It's exactly what we're seeing in stocks and bonds and in real estate. And I think it's creating a problem that I don't think we've really even begun to see the beginning of what this really means. At the same time, you have all asset classes, literally all asset classes at all-time highs. In fact, I was looking at a chart the other day. There are only 2 commodities that come to mind that are not at all-time highs from their 1980 peak: sugar and silver. When you talk about all asset classes, in particular the big 3, stocks, bonds, and real estate, being at all-time highs factored against all-time lows in interest rates, and you look at silver, an asset that is massively needed in an expansion in industrial applications in green and digital, an asset that has experienced a renaissance in demand from the monetary side of the table, at less than half of its 1980 high, the only one other than white table sugar. I will tell you that I look at it as the buying opportunity of a generation. When you realize that 300 million ounces were taken off of COMEX last year, when more than that will be taken off this year, the sovereign wealth funds, the big money, JP Morgan amassing 1.1 billion ounces of it, the price doesn't matter. The price is being held down to misdirect the public so that the big money can accumulate what is a strategic metal and one that is needed in anything that conducts electricity in the digital and green world. The duality of demand that silver possesses is extraordinary. It's what separates it from just about any other commodity, where most commodities have one use case. Copper in industry. I know you wanted to chat about copper. It's used in an industrial side of things. Gold is mostly monetary, but silver is both heavily industrial and increasing in its industrial applications, but also has a 5,000-year track record of being a monetary metal. So when I look at the prices of gold and silver not behaving, they want us to believe, I guess it has to do with this new strain of COVID. And look, the bottom line is that the price is being manipulated. All manipulations end eventually, especially when they are being done for immoral purposes. You cannot hold back a global tide of demand in something like silver. It will end badly. I truly do believe that silver is the investment opportunity of a generation. And I mean that as God is my witness. I believe it is the investment opportunity of a generation because of its duality in demand and its depletion geologically in the ground. These two things, to me, make silver what I believe to be the finest investment you could make. And when we look at gold, of course, its tier one reserve status since 2019, I think is why the central banks have been voraciously accumulating it. And they're not complaining that the paper price has been, the central banks, that is, excuse me, why the central banks have been voraciously accumulating it. And because of that, they're not complaining that the commercial banks have been holding the price down, misdirecting the public, because it allows all the accumulators cover to accumulate and not be crowded out of their trade when the rest of the world sees just what a value it is. But when you start to see 19 years worth of inflows into the stock market in 1 year, and the insiders start to massively sell, where the CEO of Microsoft sells 50% of his stock, not 10 or 20, but 50. I think we're getting very close to that seminal moment, Alex, where, you know, buying precious metals is not for investment, it's wealth. And it's for that type of a scenario, but not just for that type of scenario. Too many people look at gold and silver as a doom and gloom hedge. It is, but it's also wealth and has been for 5,000 years. So whether it's an emergency or an opportunity, you know, when you realize that all of this money has been pumped into the stock market, it can't last forever. It's like a balloon and you're continually blowing air into the balloon. And even if you don't pop a hole in it, if you stop blowing air, it starts to deflate. And that's what I see coming for these markets. You know, you have a Fed who says, we're going to start tapering. No, they're not. They can't taper. Maybe it'll be token, maybe. But if they do, everything collapses. There will be no tapering. There will be, other than a token, 5 or 10 billion a month, and they'll still do 140 or 50 and probably open accounts in the Cayman Islands to do more. But the point of it is that at some point, these markets have to correct, stocks, bonds, and real estate. And the only inversely correlated asset class to stocks in the United States are precious metals. So maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe it's single-digit price to earnings ratios on blue chip stocks paying a 6% or 7% dividend. Maybe it's that cabin up in Big Bear in your neck of the woods, or up in Tahoe, or up in northern Minnesota, or wherever it may be, that piece of property that you've wanted forever. Maybe it's selling at fair value, price to an interest rate market that reflects reality. So owning precious metals is wealth. It's there for an emergency. It's there for an opportunity. And if you never need to use it, it's the best way to pass money on to your kids. So don't be dissuaded by the price not behaving the way that intuition would tell us it should. They are purposely being counterintuitive with its price action to allow the biggest money in the world to reposition out of dollars, just like Russia has recently done, where Russia has now, for the first time ever, has more gold in their reserves than they do US dollars. So the world is de-dollarizing. The biggest money in the world is de-dollarizing. And I think you do as they say, not as they are doing, not as their rhetoric says.
Yeah, and you make a really good point too, Andy, about the stock market and Elon Musk, because we've seen it. Elon Musk seems to drive where people put their money. Like when he said to invest in Dogecoin, it ballooned on Twitter. So it is kind of strange that he's selling this much of his company all of a sudden, and other big names are starting to follow him. So do you think the stock market could go down? Do you think he's, preparing for that because a huge amount of his wealth is in his stocks?
Absolutely. Remember what I just said, 19 years worth of inflows went into the stock market this year. Almost over $900 billion. I think he realizes that it can't stay at these levels, and profit's not a 4-letter word. He's made an awful lot. So, no, he's not selling his company. He's just paring down his exposure to the stock, which, you know, he's a very wealthy man on paper, but not until you realize it. And, you know, he's buying a silver mine too, I was told. And, you know, I think he needs to guarantee production of silver for his solar panels and for his batteries. I think he's ahead of the curve like the big money does. Big money is ahead of the curve. Most of us little people are far too reactionary, and we react after it's been confirmed. But all you got to do is pay close attention. And when you see at the tail end of what is a generational bull market in equities that really isn't substantiated by the underlying economy, but more so by a Federal Reserve and their policy, I think he's smart. And if I were in his position, I'd probably sell more than that if it wouldn't completely destabilize the company. But I think that a lot of the gains that we've seen over the last 18 months, almost all of them really, are courtesy of a Federal Reserve and their policies towards interest rates and easy money.
Yeah, so those gains could be eviscerated pretty soon, you're thinking.
Well, look how fast it fell in March of 2020, 40% in a day or two, you know? So yeah, when you see 19 years worth of inflows in 1 year, what happens when it starts to deflate? Does that mean you see 19 years worth of deflation in equity prices immediately? Over a course of 1 year, do you see 20 years worth of profit evaporate? Maybe. I just think that for people to ignore this is a massive, massive mistake. And look, we buy precious metals not to get rich. We buy it because it's wealth. And in an environment where the Federal Reserve is choosing the equity markets over the dollar, they're destroying the value of the dollar in order to keep equity markets up. And I think that really is the important thing here, is that you have to be proactive, Alex. You cannot be reactive in this world we live in anymore. The world is far too quick. Things happen far too fast. Most things happen on a Monday morning. We wake up after a Sunday night to a new reality. And that's how fast I think things will happen. So the big money always positions ahead of the crowd. And I think that's what you're seeing.
So do you think the economic ninja is right in his assessment, basically, that we're going to be seeing huge deflation and then go into hyper inflation?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was just saying. And in essence, is that you will see deflation in all sorts of assets. I mean, look, you have so much debt out there that can't be serviced. And the only tool that the Federal Reserve has at this point is to print more. So I think what we're going to see would be more along the lines of hyper stagflation. As an example, you look at Biden's Build Back Better plan, where they want to spend a ton of money to pump up the economy and give people jobs, right? So, you know, the thing that has to be, I think, talked about first when you talk about something like that is that when you see, there's a difference, I guess I would say. There's a difference between government created money and, you know, like production of fiat money is not the same thing as production within the economy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so when you have trillions of dollars in public works programs being created out of thin air to create jobs, yeah, that's going to create jobs. It'll also inflate the heck out of prices. And unless you see wages increase commensurate, you'll see stagflation. So you'll have people with jobs, which will help the unemployment numbers. But all of this money created out of nowhere will raise prices, and you'll see more inflation. But if you don't see an increase commensurate in wages, you have stagflation, which is an increase in prices characterized by little or no economic growth, higher taxes, higher costs. And I think that will happen. I really do. I think we are on our way to hyper stagflation, and the Fed has no tool but the printing press any longer. They can't raise rates. You know, back in back in 1980, Paul Volcker raised interest rates to almost 20% to combat the high levels of inflation. You can't do that anymore. So yes, I think he's very much right. We are seeing deflationary forces because of all the debt and servicing the debt becoming much, much harder. Inflationary forces due to the rampant money creation, and that's the Federal Reserve's reaction to this. So yeah, I think maybe the only place we would slightly differ would be, I believe we'll see hyperstagflation, which is worse than hyperinflation because it's a much harder, more difficult environment where prices are rising and people cannot service the debt whatsoever, and the economy just grinds to a halt.
Yeah. So one thing you said, Andy, is that the Fed is out of options. So, I'm just looking, what would the Federal Reserve do basically to save the stock market? And the only thing I can think of is a war, basically, kind of like in World War II. That's what brought us out of the Great Depression. And now it seems like Biden is mad at Putin and about this Russian buildup of troops in Ukraine, when he didn't care about it at all, a while back. So it almost seems like they're going to start a hot war with Russia next year. And I just want to see, what you think of this. It says tens of thousands of Russian troops are massed on the Ukrainian border. The highly anticipated call between the two leaders came when because of Russia's threat to its neighbors. So they're trying to, I don't know, it seems like they want to start something, and Biden is mad at Putin. So can you tell the viewers a little bit what you think of this, Andy?
I think the numbers were 175,000 troops are on the border, and I guess if they feel threatened by the Ukraine for whatever reason, that is their prerogative to move people onto their within the Russian Federation on their border. I think that the United States is hypocritical. We fight wars all over the place for a whole lot less than what Putin is standing up for. I think Putin is a hell of a chess player. If you have me, they've already, in essence, kind of moved their pieces into place in their protection of Saudi Arabia, or their joint military cooperation with Saudi Arabia and with Nigeria and with India. They are creating alliances economically and militarily. It is the joint military cooperation agreement that Kissinger put into place with the Saudi kingdom in 1974 that has given the dollar its dollar hegemony, its world reserve status since 74, and that's being challenged directly by Russia right now. Russia has hypersonic ICBM missiles. Russia is part of the BRICS nation, China. Nigeria is being protected by Russia. Also, Nigeria is part of the BRICS, or part of the Belt Road Initiative, connecting Asia and Africa. Are we going to go to war with China and Russia? If we do, God help us all, especially with someone like President Biden at the helm. Well, I don't even think he knows where he is. And, say what you want about President Trump and the way that he communicated. Maybe he could have been a little more eloquent, but his policies would not have had us in this position. And, I think there's no coincidence that Putin made the announcement to protect Saudi Arabia, or to have a joint military cooperation agreement with Saudi Arabia the day after we unharmoniously left Afghanistan. I think the likelihood of us going to war with Russia is remote. I know they're talking about imposing all sorts of sanctions against them and this and that. I guess I'm just simply in the mindset that the U.S. is nearing the end of its dominance in the world. We are less respected. We are less feared. And this is just a prime example of it, where you see Putin move in on Saudi Arabia. We went to war or took over and killed or imprisoned Hussein and Gaddafi for threatening to do oil in euros. Toppled their regimes, killed them. Good luck trying to do that with Russia. And I think if we go to war with Russia, we all have a lot bigger problems on our hands than just what it's going to do to the economy. So I would like to hope that that doesn't happen, but I think it's emblematic of where we are in this stage as a country towards the way the world looks at us. So saber rattling, yeah, maybe. But quite frankly, I think it's disingenuous of the United States to say anything to Putin about what he does to protect his own borders and about his neighbors, because we've gone to war for a lot less than that, for a lot less reasons, and many of which were disingenuous. So I don't know, Alex. I don't know exactly how I feel about it. I'd like to hope it doesn't come to a hot war, because, you know, when you're talking a country like Russia, a country like China, these are wars you do not want to get in, for sure. And I think these are reasons why you mitigate your exposure to the US dollar. This, more than anything else, is why you need to start to divest of dollars. Look, Putin just came out the other day and said we have more gold in reserves than we do US dollars. The world is de-dollarizing. The East is moving away from the dollar. They are striking business unilateral deals, and they are striking military cooperation deals, and all of it usurping the dollar, just like the Belt Road Initiative, which is the largest infrastructure project in human history. It's without the dollar's participation. We are at the tail end of our good grace with the rest of the world, and I think the rest of the world is making alternatives that really haven't invited the US or the dollar to be part of.
Yeah, so do you think this could just turn out to be a proxy war where we just, give Ukraine, very powerful weapons and have them fight the Russians?
That's usually the playbook. But that may not end well either. And, how would we feel if we were threatened by Mexico and Russia was arming the Mexican government and telling us that we couldn't station our troops along the Texas-Arizona border? Look at it from that standpoint. Who are we to tell another country what to do, how to do it? And I think that's where the rubber meets the road, between diplomacy and military might. I think that we have, in many respects, shown the world that, look, I still think the United States is the greatest country in the world, but our leaders have done some horrible things and have put us in places that I think make us trying to tell Russia what they can do around their own border seem very hypocritical. And just ask yourself, what if this was Mexico and Russia telling us what we could and couldn't do, and arming the Mexican military with high-powered weaponry that could very easily, take out people all across that border? This is an issue that I think, if you really start to internalize it and look at our past behavior, who are we to say this? So quite frankly, I would be much happier if we brought every one of our troops across the world home and protected our borders instead of fighting wars that we have no business in, and meddling in affairs like Russia and Ukraine, which we have no business in. And I don't know. I just think the whole thing is pretty hypocritical.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I wanted to get into the copper market a little bit with you, Andy, because we were talking about earlier, and basically what Chile's going to do, the biggest producer and exporter of copper in the world, is that they're going to double their tax burden, more than double actually, basically putting a royalty on their copper. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on this and what you thought of it, Andy.
Well, a lot of people talk about mine nationalization, where countries who have natural resources sell them to companies that come in and mine them, foreign companies. And I think governments are starting to realize the natural resources are very, very important. And this is one step away from full out nationalization of the assets, where they're going to basically say, we want a royalty from whatever's pulled out of the ground. Our minerals, we want a royalty. You'll probably see a whole lot more of this. This is one of the dangers in buying mining stocks, is that you deal with geopolitical risk. And I think the higher the prices get, the crazier the world gets, the more distorted things get. You'll see other countries and do the same thing. And this is why when you buy mining shares, whether they be copper, silver, gold, whatever, you want to look at the geopolitical atmosphere, where it is that you're buying them. So this isn't full-on nationalization, but it's one step away from it. And they're seeing all of their resources being pulled out of the ground and sold for prices that they're starting to think, well, maybe we're making a mistake doing this, so let's add a royalty, a tax, if you will, to it, so that at least we can reap some benefits for what the rest of the world is benefiting from taking our natural resources.
Yeah, and also Chile is also the fourth biggest producer of silver. So do you think they might do the same thing for their silver as well, or do you think this will just be a copper thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, wait till the price of silver starts to go up. You'll start to see countries just close it down. I mean, as it is, most of the silver comes from Mexico, Peru, Chile. These are places where I think you could very, very quickly see them just shut it down altogether. More high prices, more supply chain distortions. This is just more of the same thing, and that will lead to much higher prices. It's not just copper that goes up. Copper is needed in so many things in terms of building and building out infrastructure, which will only make the costs of new construction that much more expensive. And you'll see more and more supply chain distortions like this for whatever the reason is, that continues to see inflationary pressure on everything. And now you're starting to see the same thing in agricultural commodities. You're going to start to see, soybeans, as an example, are getting much, much higher. Well, soybeans aren't just used to feed people, they're used to feed livestock. Same thing with corn. So you have the price of the underlying commodity going higher, but the extension will make meat prices much higher. Well, the same thing is true here with copper getting harder to get and higher in price. It will start to have an effect on anything in infrastructure, and it will make longer delays, higher prices. And I think inflation is here to stay. And this is why you had both Janet Yellen and Powell say time to retire the word transitory. It's structural. It's here to stay. And I really do believe that the government has chosen the equity markets and inflation over austerity and the hard decisions. So I think inflation is here to stay. Supply chain distortions are here to stay. And it's not just what's happening across the world in Russia and the Ukraine. You have right now you have the murder rates, homicide rates at all-time highs in 12 cities across the globe. In your neck of the woods in California, smash and grabs happening in places like San Francisco. I have a friend who's an executive who spends a lot of time in San Francisco, stayed in a $600 a night hotel, came out and saw a person shooting heroin right on the street in front of the front door of a $600 a night swanky San Fran hotel. You have in New York City, if you own a small business and your employees aren't vaccinated, they have to be fired. They're destroying the economy. They're destroying this country, whether it be their reaction to COVID and their policies and their lockdowns, or the way that they're are massively inflating the dollar, and by extension, creating distortions in prices in stocks, bonds, and real estate through manipulating interest rates. The leadership of this country has led us astray. And I think that this is why you buy gold and silver, Alex. You buy it not to get wealthy, you buy it to protect yourself from what's coming down the pike.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, it's better than keeping your money at the bank anyway. And I think
that's the most common thing I hear these days. I mean, every day, I don't want my money in the bank. I don't want my money in the bank. I hear that every single day.
Oh yeah, I definitely don't want my money in the bank. I don't trust the banks. That money could be gone tomorrow because they went bankrupt or something. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Well, in the systemic risk, you're compensated so poorly for the risk. There's bail-ins and there's the systemic nature where everyone is tied together through derivatives and I think that this is not the end of the story. This is just the very beginning. And So if it's bad now, just wait till it gets a little bit worse. Just wait till interest rates rise because of some event, and you see the markets collapse. And if you think it's bad now, just wait. And you know, all these shops that are being looted and smashed and grabbed and ransacked, watch what happens when all the shops close in the inner cities and all the people leave who create the tax revenue. Why do you think 5,000 people a day every day are moving to Florida and California, to the red states? And I just think that you haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah.
12 major cities hit all-time high in homicide records. I mean, what the hell? This is a lot deeper than just economics.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse. And, you know, you said big businesses are closing down in these cities. You know, I'm sure local branches of banks are too. So that just makes it even harder to get your money also. And yeah, and also I like to have my, you know, my wealth in my hands. Like I don't want it on numbers on a screen. Oh, that's my money, right? Where anybody can take it, you know. So I wanted to ask you, Andy, did you have a special on gold or silver this week?
We do have a special on the 2022 silver Noah's Ark coin at $3.75 over the price of silver. We also have the quarter ounce Noah's Ark coins, and they're brand new. In fact, I've never even seen them before. Let me just check. Hold on. Bear with me. They are going to be, apologize. They are going to be $2.45 over the price of silver, over the melt value per coin. Quarter ounce Noah's Ark. They come 500 little quarter ounce to a box, a little wood box. They're really neat for people who want to have something to barter with if need be, have greater utility and functionality. But anyone who sends an email and mentions the Free American Press and sends it to info@milesfranklin, we'll answer your questions. We'll send you a inventory. We'll make sure you get the best price in the United States.
Yeah, well, that sounds great, Andy. And if anybody wants to get some gold and silver to protect their wealth, please write Andy at Miles Franklin and mention the Free Press.
Info@milesfranklin. Info@milesfranklin.
Info@Miles Franklin. Yep. Okay. So, yeah, is there anything else you'd like to share, Andy?
You know, Alex, I just I think that things are getting crazy, and I think people need to take a step back and realize when you have the Biden's nominee for the comptroller of the currency call for a complete digital currency, call for the ability to add money and take money from people's accounts, full modern monetary theory, abolishment of the banks, destruction of the fossil fuel industry, in particular coal and oil. When you see all of the big money around the world, China, Serbia, India, Russia, Bank of Hungary, Bank of Turkey, Bank of Poland, Bank of Austria, the Dutch National Bank, they're all buying gold and silver, all of them. When you see massive acquisition by the sovereign wealth funds off of COMEX, accumulating copious amounts of gold and silver, when you see the commercial banks accumulating it, they're all using the manipulated price to run cover. They are all de-dollarizing. When you see Russia have more reserves in gold than they do in dollars, they are all preparing for some sort of an event. When you see the CEO of Microsoft sell 50% of his stock and Elon Musk 10 billion, they are all preparing for some sort of an event. And I don't know, I think that it's getting to the point now where if people don't take a step back and de-dollarize and mitigate their exposure to the equity markets and the dollar, they will have a religious experience when whatever this moment of correction is, whatever it is, whatever tips the pyramid over, the inverted pyramid over. If you haven't already positioned outside the dollar, like the biggest money in the world has been doing now ad nauseum for a couple of years, you're in trouble. So I just want people to know that when I talk about gold and silver, it's not an investment, it's wealth. And I'm honored to come on your show. And even if we help just one person, that's fantastic. So I'd like to keep coming back. I know we took a couple of weeks off, but I think it's getting to the point right now where it's more important than ever that we keep doing what we're doing. And certainly it's good to see you, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your listeners.
Oh, well, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show, Andy, and giving everybody your thoughts. And if you could please check out Andy at info@milesfranklin, please send him an email. Yeah, so thanks again, Andy, for being on the show. And thank you all to all the viewers who are watching. God bless and have a good day.
God bless. You take care.